Hello, and welcome back to the ServSafe Food Protection Manager Certification Training course. My name is Mr. Dan Delcher, and I'm a Certified ServSafe Instructor with the Essex County Schools of Technology. This is Chapter 7, Storage. The objectives are, for this chapter, identify the following: requirements for labeling and date marking food, how to rotate food using first in, first out, FIFO, temperature requirements for food in storage, practices that can prevent temperature abuse during storage, practices that can prevent cross-contamination during storage, guidelines for storing specific types of food, including meat, poultry, fish, shellfish, eggs, produce, and dry food. Labeling. As food gets received into the establishment, it's important that before it goes on the shelves or in the refrigerator, that it's properly labeled. Labeling food for use on site. All items not in their original containers must be labeled. Food labels should include the common name of the food or a statement that clearly and accurately identifies it. It is not necessary to label food if it clearly will not be mistaken for another item. Labeling food packaged on-site for retail sale, common name of the food or a statement clearly identifying it, quantity of the food. If the item contains 2 or more ingredients, list the ingredients and sub-ingredients in descending order by weight. List of artificial colors and flavors and chemical preservatives. Name and place of business of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor, and the source of each major food allergen contained in the food. These are common if you are going to, let's say, you're going to prepare your own spice blend. It's important that you have, or let's say you're going to sell cheese, cold cheese. You need to make sure that these items are on the label. Date marking. Ready-to-eat TCS food must be marked if held for longer than 24 hours. Date mark must indicate when the food must be sold, eaten, or thrown out. Ready-to-eat TCS food can be stored for only 7 days if it is held at 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius, or lower. The count begins on the day the food was prepared or a commercial container was opened. For example, potato salad prepared and stored on October 1st would have a discard date of October 7th on the label. A typical label looks like the picture in the corner. It typically says used by or some sort of date marking word. Then asks for the date, the time that the relative time that it was prepared. Mostly, you're going to put the time that you finished preparing it, and then the name of the food. Operations use different systems for date marking. Some write the date or date the food was prepared on the label. Others write the use by date or date on the label. So as you can see, this one uses the use by date. So that means that this is the date and time at which the turkey chili should be thrown out. Commercial processed food needs to be date marked if a commercially processed food has a use by date that is less than 7 days from the date the container was opened. Then the container should be marked with this use by date, as long as the date is based on food safety. An example, let's say you get a commercial container of chicken salad, and that chicken salad has a expiration or use by date of Thursday, and you open it up on Tuesday. Obviously, that's not 7 days, but obviously there's a possibility that it could go bad and start creating foodborne pathogens after Thursday. Storage. Date marking is when combining needs to be done when combining food with different use by dates in a dish based on the discard date of the dish on the earliest use by date of the ingredients. Consider a shrimp and sausage jambalaya prepared on December 4th. The shrimp has a use by date of December 8th. The sausage has a use by date of December 10th. The use by date of the jambalaya should be December 8th because that shrimp is going to be the first thing that is going to be expired in the dish. It is important that we maintain proper rotation so that nothing expires and nothing gets used. Any food that gets thrown out is a loss of money. So we must follow the FIFO method, first in, first out. We want to first identify the food items used by or expiration date. Store items with the earliest use by or expiration dates in front of items with later dates. Once shelved, use those items stored in front first. Throw out food that has passed its manufacturer use by or expiration date. Obviously, in a restaurant, especially in these times, we want to make sure that everything is used before its expiration date. Temperature guidelines concerning storage. You must store TCS food at an internal temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, or 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. You must store meat, poultry, seafood, and dairy items in the coldest part of the unit away from the door. Store frozen food at temperatures that keep it frozen. Make sure storage units have at least one air temperature measuring device. It must be accurate to plus or minus 3 degrees Fahrenheit or plus or minus 1.5 degrees Celsius. Put it in the warmest part of refrigerated units and the coldest part of hot holding units. Do not overload coolers or freezers. Avoid frequent opening of the cooler. Use cold curtains in walk-in coolers and freezers. Use open shelving. Monitor food temperatures regularly, including randomly sample food temperatures. If the food is not at the correct temperature, throw it out. Defrost freezers regularly. How do we prevent cross-contamination in these storage areas? It's important that we store food in a clean, dry location away from dust and other contaminants. Never store food in these areas. Locker rooms or dressing rooms, restrooms or garbage rooms, mechanical rooms, under unshielded sewer lines or leaking water lines, and under stairwells. Damaged, spoiled, or incorrectly stored food must be discarded. You must discard unsafe food. If it's damaged, spoiled, incorrectly stored, missing its date mark, past its date mark, exceeded time temperature requirements. If returning unsafe food, store it away from other food and equipment. Label it so it is not used. Supplies. You may have noticed this in your storage area or in your refrigerator, but you must store all items in designated storage areas that are on racks that are at least 6 inches away from walls and off the floor. Store single-use items, sleeve of single-use cups, single-use gloves in original packaging. Sometimes we use containers like the example picture to store flour or other ingredients. Store food in containers intended for food. Use containers that are durable, leak-proof, and able to be sealed or covered. Never use empty food containers to store chemicals. Never put food in empty chemical containers. And wrap or cover all food correctly. Cleaning of storage areas. Keep all storage areas clean and dry. Clean up spills and leaks immediately. Clean dollies, carts, transporters, and trays often. Store food in containers that have been cleaned and sanitized. Store dirty linens in clean, non-absorbent containers or washable laundry bags. So how should we store foods inside of a refrigerator? Well, first of all, they should be wrapped or covered before they go in. Example, using plastic wrap. Store raw meat, poultry, and seafood separately from ready-to-eat food. If this is not possible, store ready-to-eat food above raw meat, poultry, and seafood. This will prevent juices from raw food from dripping onto ready-to-eat food. So example, this stand-up refrigerator. We're going to store these items in the proper order. On the top, A, we want to store ready-to-eat foods. That could include a dish we've already prepared, or fresh vegetables, or anything that could be used ready to eat. Below that, we're going to put seafood. Below that, we could have whole cuts of beef and pork. Below that is ground meat or ground fish. And on the very bottom of our shelving, we could have whole and ground poultry. Now, obviously, you may not have all these items in the same location, but this kind of gives you an example of where each item should be placed. Whole and ground poultry are on the bottom because a lot of the times poultry can be very moist and can have something that can be easily leak out. It's also one of the TCS foods that is that can contribute to one of the big six diseases. D is because ground meat is below whole cuts of beef and pork because it is ground up and basically the more surface area exposed. C, a lot of the times those are whole cuts of meat, and seafood is placed there. You also want to note that a lot of the times you don't want to just put a package of meat into the refrigerator. It's a good idea that, like, see the whole cut of meat, that you place it on some sort of pan to ensure that it doesn't leak all over the place. Because again, a leakage, if it gets onto other foods, contaminates it, and if it can also create a mess inside your refrigerator. This storage order is based on the minimum internal cooking temperature of each food as well. So, what are the required temperatures and locations? We're going to show you a few slides discussing specific items. Meat, eggs, fish, shellfish, fresh produce, poultry, reduced oxygen packaging foods, UHT and aseptically packaged foods, canned foods, dry foods. This concludes Chapter 7. You will now go to Google Classroom and complete the Unit 7 questions. Thank you.